Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. First of all, just thanks to Sinn Féin for enabling this further discussion of gender-based violence. In recent weeks, I think we've seen the acknowledgement that domestic, sexual and gender-based violence is a national social problem. The tragic killing of Aisling Murphy and the visceral response from every community, every city, every town, every village, every townland even, obliges us to respond swiftly, meaningfully and tangibly. Violence against women is a perpetual pandemic, a pandemic that never recedes or fades away. It has always been with us. In this discussion and the statements earlier today, we have rightly referred to the culture that permits and even encourages violence, abuse and harassment of girls and women. We have highlighted the role that men and boys can play as individuals and the solidarity that women provide to each other. Now it's our turn as legislators to respond, not just to give speeches, but to ensure substantial and really effective policies. Interventions must be early and effective, and penalties for perpetrators must be robust and effective. In the numerous times I've raised this issue, I've highlighted 3 areas of immediate action that the government should have taken long ago. I mentioned these earlier, but I think they're worth mentioning again and again and again. Firstly, domestic violence. Across the pandemic, we've seen significant increases in people fleeing domestic violence. Support providers, national ones and ones like West Cork Women Against Domestic Violence, have had very, very clear rises in the numbers of calls. There is a very pressing need for more refuge spaces. The Istanbul Convention standard, as we know, is 1 refuge space per 10,000 people, and in Ireland instead we provide 1 refuge space per 10,000 women, leaving us with 50%, so with half of the recommended bare minimum, including very little infrastructure for male victims. These refuge spaces are needed, and they are needed now. The other point on domestic violence is the importance of a dedicated minister or the Department of the Taoiseach overseeing this. Campaigners have repeatedly called for a dedicated minister with reach across all of the departments and agencies with which a survivor may interact and a cabinet standing committee. Victims and survivors of domestic violence have to interact with local housing offices, with social welfare officers, with doctors, with Gardaí and with social workers. And we know it's a really kind of complex matter that needs a coordinated response, and oftentimes people need training. We need multidisciplinary teams and somebody overseeing all of these services, being able to interact with those needs. Secondly, we need a drastic overhaul of how our justice system understands and responds to sexual assault and violence. The detection rates for sexual offences were 10% for 2020. This is on the significant underreporting of sexual violence. In 2019, over 14,000 contacts were received by the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre National 24-hour helpline. However, there were only 3,307 offences reported to Gardaí in the same year. Only a small percentage of rapes and sexual assaults are reported, and then only 10% involved a perpetrator being charged or cautioned. There must be reforms in how policing and the court system engage with victims. The hostile treatment of victims has to end. The Realities of Rape Trials in Ireland report from Dr. Susan Leahy of UL in conjunction with Dublin Rape Crisis Centre outlines the experience of victims or survivors and has clear recommendations. Delays in the trial process is a major source of concern, which have a significant impact on the victims recovering and their personal and professional lives. General understandings of consent are still poor, and biases, stereotypes and assumptions still influence juries. The report has 18 recommendations, including making available free legal advice and information for anyone reporting or considering reporting any type of sexual offence, and providing guidance for juries on consent and to address rape myths. There is a need for immediate changes to our justice system to make it truly victim-centred, to support and encourage girls and women, as well as boys and men, to report all forms of sexual assault and violence. Thirdly, there's an urgent need for education on consent, sexual violence, coercion and other types of assault, including online crimes. The government delayed the progress of the Social Democrats bill, ensuring a standardised and evidence-based approach to relationship and sex education. The need for proper education on healthy relationships and understanding of sex is even more important than ever. NUIG academic Elaine Healy-Burns, who's written a PhD in consent, is calling for the relationships and sexuality education curriculum to be brought into the 21st century. I'm calling on the government to overturn its decision to delay our bill. I've raised all of these issues before and I will continue to raise them until we get the action that women and girls deserve.